Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are at the start of free agency for the 2033 to 2034 offseason, and the massive pile of money that we had available for signing players this year and potential extensions is potentially gone because we are in on a number of players that we've made minor league offers to try to round out our farm system. But most importantly, we are going after Shamar Jenneret, reigning American League most valuable player, coming off of a monster season, and he's headed to free agency. He's looking for about $41.4 million a year over 9 years. We have offered him that 7-year contract that I mentioned for $271 million, so fewer years and less money per year than he is reportedly looking for. Unfortunately, we had to include a no trade clause, and unfortunately, we had to include multiple player options and no team options over the potential course of the contract. So it's probably not going to be a crazy busy off season for us if we are fortunate enough to get Jenneret signed. That will clearly be the big thing, and to some extent the only significant thing that we do this off season. But as we've talked about in previous episodes, we were a 104 win team last year, and we basically lost two key pieces: our starting left fielder Honeycutt and our starting center fielder Featherston. We plan on replacing Featherston with Tyreek Hardage, who's come up in our farm system. And although we will shift around the positions that people play, and even if we do get Jenneret, he won't be a left fielder for us. His bat should more than replace Honeycutt's. And on paper, I think we would be a better team than the 104 win team that we were last season if Jenneret ends up signing with us. If he doesn't end up signing with us, the only hope is that we'll find that out relatively soon. There are certainly players out there, most notably Joel Nelson, but Yordan Alvarez, and some others who we could pivot to, who would not necessarily be as good as Jenneret. But right now we are pushing our chips into the table. This is likely going to be the last season that Adley Rutschman is on our team. Got a $41.5 million team option for him next year. That's a big part of the reason that shows that we've got no money available for extensions with the front-loaded offer that we've made to Jenneret, as well as big money for several years after that. But teaming those two up, along with our very well-balanced and strong pitching staff, will hopefully be the thing that can finally get this team a World Series title. And if that's the case, then we'll likely look to move on from Rutschman next year rather than paying him $41.5 million in a year that he'd be turning 37 before the season even started. And if we don't win, we likely move on from Rutschman as well. So it's going to be a bit of a holding pattern here, quite honestly, for the next few weeks. We'll see how long it takes for us to hear what Jenneret thinks of our offer. We'll see if he comes back and says someone else is giving him a better contract that he likes more. And we'll also just see how long he wants to take before he lets us know what he's thinking and potentially signs a deal. Would love to have things wrapped up by the end of the winter meetings and about 3 weeks from now, but there are certainly no guarantees that that will happen. And perhaps not surprisingly, it seems like there is a bidding war for Shamar Jenneret. Looks like Nashville and Montreal are also in on him. And he says he is leading towards the Nashville Stars right now, which would be particularly painful for us, given that they were the other expansion team that entered the league the same time that we did. He's still willing to do the 7 years that we offered him. He's just looking for much more money to get this done. But I don't, and he's looking for an opt out after 3 seasons. That almost could work in our favor depending on how we structure this contract. Obviously, if he ends up completely hitting the wall the next 3 years and suffers some major injuries, he'll probably opt in. But we could try to structure it in a way where we encourage him a bit to opt out after 3 years, which gives us the end of the prime of his career, most likely, and then potentially gives both him and us a chance to revisit things in a few years. And there's a part of me that's using Jenneret coming back, saying he wants more money, to let me reconsider whether we want to go after him. Because when I look at Jenneret and his batting stats, he's got a 134 WRC plus over the course of his career. I look at the second baseman, Joel Nelson, the second best free agent available, and he's got a 134 WRC plus over the course of his career. And he's looking for a lot less money, about $8 or $9 million a year less, and he actually has some value as a fielder. But the things that scare me about Nelson are that fragile injury proneness, and he's also closing in on being a 30-year-old, so he's almost a full year older than Jenneret. Boy, if Nelson wasn't fragile, he would be real tempting to me. I don't think the bat overall is as good as Jenneret's. Certainly doesn't have the same home run power. In Nelson, likely, if he was normal in terms of his injury proneness, would probably be asking for a bit more money. But if we bring Nelson on board, we're going to want to be playing him in the field. Whereas Jenneret, we're kind of viewing as a DH, and I know that seems a bit perverse. Why would I want to pay 8, 9, maybe 10 million more for Jenneret when I'm not going to get anything out of the field with him? But my thought is, with Jenneret and that normal injury proneness, if he's only playing as a DH, we're probably going to get 150 plus games from him every year. Whereas Nelson, a year older, fragile injury proneness, and likely playing second base for us in the field, could end up being a guy who could miss some critical games for us as a team that wants to win it all. So I think I'm going to make one more run at Jenneret if he comes back and Nashville or Montreal is offering him even more money than what we offer him here. I might pivot to Nelson, but I think Jenneret is likely to be a better offensive player for the next several seasons, and he's also more likely to be in the lineup every day for us the next several seasons. Given that we're a win-now team with a ton of money to spend, I think I'm going to circle back with Jenneret. And Jenneret says he's looking for $41.8 million over those 7 years. We've structured a deal that averages $40 million over those 7 years, very front-loaded this first year here. I don't know if it's even close enough to what he wants that he'll think about it, but it's kind of splitting the gap almost evenly between where we were with our last offer and what he's asking for now. I don't think it's going to be quite enough that he's going to have us submit it, but I want to try to save as much money as possible. Oh, he actually will think about it. So 7 years, 280 million on the table now to Blanks Generette. And apparently rumors of our discussions with Generette made it into the press. And he's come back now and said that he favors our deal right now. Doesn't mean that this is a done deal yet, but certainly would think that we are potentially in the driver's seat. It's only December 3rd, so it seems conceivable that this could get wrapped up even before the winter meetings, but we'll wait and hear what Shamar has to say to us. And here on December 8th, 2033, the Buffalo Wings have made the biggest acquisition in franchise history, and Shamar Generette is signed to be our designated hitter. $280 million potentially over the next 7 years. He's got an opt-out after that third season. Don't know whether even in the early stages of this contract we're hoping for him to opt out or not. But we've got him on board, front-loaded this year, where we had a lot of money to spend, and then you can see 38 to 39 million for the potential 5 to 6 years after that. I'm gonna have to pay a third-round pick in compensation, but we have the monster bat for the middle of our lineup that we have generally lacked throughout this playthrough. Now it's just a matter of Generette hopefully performing up to expectations on the field over the next few years. And we've just put Generette on to the 40-man roster and the 26-man roster. You can see we've still got a little bit of money to play with this year, but clearly not going to be doing much of anything that significant the rest of the way in free agency. Still would like to add a good defensive infielder to be a potentially utility guy for us in the coming months. And we're still going to continue investigating the potential to bring on a big-time number one starter. Would obviously love to do that as well. But we've got our big bat. Our new bench coach thinks we should be playing Generette in left field and batting him third. We'll see about that. Obviously, once we get to the regular season, have to make some decisions. I can see one thing that's going to change. We're putting Bobby Bolig in center field right now. He probably, sadly, is the best guy that we have for center field at this point, but that's only because Tyreek Hardage is not on the 26-man roster. So presumably Hardage will end up playing center field for us. Bolig likely shifting to left, and then that would most likely mean that Generette would go to DH and get Miguel Vargas out of the lineup against right-handers. But for now, it's fine if he maintains that position for us. You can see the home run power of 70 is 10 points higher than anybody else on the team. And that's important for us, although we had the second best offense in the National League this past season in terms of scoring runs. We were still towards the back of the pack in home runs. And the addition of Generette gives us one big-time power bat for the middle of our lineup. Which hopefully, with guys with decent power like Bolig, Heiner, Joe Edwards, means we'll have enough guys who can hit the ball over the fence to put some pressure on the opposing pitching staffs this season. And we've made it to the start of the Rule 5 draft. Typically, we're able to find a guy who competes for a spot in our bullpen in the Rule 5 draft. We've also found some decent young outfielders over the years. If there's a young guy with a lot of potential who could potentially maybe be a 26th man on our roster, particularly if it's an infielder with a little bit of a glove, that would fit pretty well with what we're looking for. Not sure that anyone we're going to pick is going to end up making our 26-man roster because our roster is pretty deep and pretty loaded at this point, I think. But we always like to at least have the optionality of having an extra interesting player or two into camp. So we'll see if we can come up with anything interesting in the Rule 5 this year. And it's going to take a while till we're picking. We are picking last. But I'm sure there will still be some interesting players around for us to consider. And the pickings actually appear somewhat slim this year in the Rule 5 draft. Our scout doesn't recommend that we do anything. We are going to take an absolute total flyer here on Alejandro Mercado, 21-year-old third baseman. He's never played higher than rookie ball. He hit .342 with 17 homers and 228 at-bats in rookie ball last year as a 21-year-old. A bit surprising that he wasn't at least promoted to Class A during the season. Looks like they've got him on the high A team right now. I don't think, and I know this is not saying much looking at this profile, I don't think he's ready to hit against major league pitching. But I do like the fact that he's got 65 infield range. He's durable as far as his injury proneness. I think it's unlikely that we will try to stash him on our 26-man roster as the 26th guy for an entire season in a year that we're trying to win just to get his rights to come our way. But he does kind of hit the profile of what we need. My thought is that we're probably going to sign someone with a better glove in 2 or 3 months when the prices come down, see who's still on the market. I think it's extremely unlikely that we'll end up keeping Mercado on our team. But we're going to roll the dice and at least bring him into camp. And we actually did end up losing 2 veterans in our system, Jacob Marcy, left fielder, and then Mookie Betts, who we had playing in Double-A for us last year when he couldn't find a major league job. So the Marlins took on Betts, and the Expos took on Marcy. As we talked about, Alejandro Mercado is the only guy that we picked in the Rule 5 this year. And I think it's pretty unlikely that he will end up making our 26-man roster. You may ask me why, given that I always kind of roll the dice and bring in a pitcher or two in the Rule 5 to give us free looks at some players in the draft. Why didn't you pick somebody this year? It's a good question. A bit of the explanation is some of the guys that we have stashed in AAA right now. Garrett Crochet and Max Meyer are 2 34-year-olds that we did not put on the 40-man roster to protect from the Rule 5 draft, so we were willing to lose them. Didn't want to guarantee them major league money, but we signed them both to minor league contracts last summer. And we still have their rights for this upcoming season. So my thought is having 2 guys like that in AAA felt like Crochet and Meyer were better or at least as good as anyone that we were going to get in the Rule 5 draft. Again, I risked losing them if another team wanted to put them on their 26-man roster. Fortunately, they did not. But I feel like with that optionality we have with guys like that in AAA, it's almost even better than picking up a similar player in the Rule 5 draft because we don't need to guarantee them a 26-man roster spot to keep their rights. Now, clearly, in both cases, Crochet is very unhappy, wants to be playing in the majors. Meyer, also very unhappy, wants to be playing in the majors. We'll certainly have those guys in spring training with us, and it's not inconceivable that one or both of them makes our pitching staff, particularly if we have some injuries. But with guys like that stashed in Albany for us right now, don't feel like we needed to bring more pitchers in, and felt like Crochet and Meyer were better than the guys who were potentially available in the Rule 5 when we were picking. And as the calendar turns to January 2034, decided it would make me feel good to take a look at the standings here, not to revisit our 104 win season and then the disappointment in the playoffs, but just to look at what Shamar Jenneret did last year, finishing second in the American League in batting, leading the league in homers, leading the league in ribbies, in OPS of over 1,000. And he was obviously the American League most valuable player. And knowing that we have that bat to join the middle of our lineup, with Seifu leading off and Heiner probably hitting right in front or right behind Jenneret, Rookie of the Year, Mike Heiner, I should add. I'm really excited to see what this offense can do this upcoming season. We've got Cy Young runner-up Chris Sabatka coming back. Sincere Shazier, one of the top prospects in baseball, was up with us 4 months last year. Going to get a full season, hopefully, out of him in the starting rotation. And then Juan Estrada, who we only got 2 months out of in the starting rotation, and as a two-way player, will likely be back also. Basically, we just had, between Estrada and Shazier, we got 1 full year out of those two guys, because Estrada, when he went down, that's when we brought Shazier up. Would certainly love all 3 of those pitchers, Sabatka, Shazier, and Estrada, to have healthy years this upcoming season. Kind of envision them being our 1, 2, and 3 guys at this point. Although there's obviously time for that to change. And before we finish off the episode, we'll check in on something that Stanley Rosella had asked us to do in the comments recently, and that's to check in on the Hall of Fame voting and see what has been going on with some of the big names in baseball today in this mythical universe. And it looks like Yadi Molina is the only player who was inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Looks like in this world, his career ended in 2022. So he made it in his 7th year on the ballot. You can see Sabathia and, shockingly, Ichiro not voted in. Garrett Cole only with 32.2% of the vote in his first year. Carlos Rodon with 44.5% of the vote in his first year. That would be a bit shocking at this point. Cole, I'm guessing, did not do much. Yeah, it looks like he won 15 games and 13 games in 23 and 24 with the Yankees, and then probably had some injury issues because he only won a total of 16 games over his last 4 years in the majors. Didn't even end up with 200 wins, 174 and 99 record, 345 ERA, 51.1 WAR. Rodon must have had some big years with the Yankees. He had some monster years with the Yankees. Led the league in wins 3 times with the Yankees. And he won 3 Cy Young Awards with the Yankees. But you can tell we're playing in a mythical universe because one of those Cy Young Awards is in 2023. And Rodon is not going to go 17-5 this year for the Yankees in real world with a 2.91 ERA. But he ended up with a 150-97 record, 46.7 WAR. So his WAR not quite as high as Cole's, but the 3 Cy Young Awards that Rodon won with the Yankees has him among the first-year players on the ballot this year, getting the most support from the voters. And taking a look back at the voting over the decade that we've been playing in this mythical universe so far, Todd Helton was inducted in 2025, Pujols in 2028, Miggy Cabrera and Max Scherzer in 2029, Alex Rodriguez in 2030, Justin Verlander in 2031, Zach Greinke in 2032, a 3-man class of Trout, almost unanimous. He ended up only playing 5 more years. Led the American League with 52 home runs in 2023, similar to Rodon. That's not going to happen this year, and it's also ended up being Trout's last MVP award. And then he still had 32, 38, 32, and 21 home runs before retiring at the age of 35. Still had 525 home runs, almost 1,400 ribbies, even though he retired at the age of 25, the age of 35, or I guess 36 by the time the year was over. And he was joined by Kershaw, like I said, who also 99.6% of the vote. Looks like Kershaw ended up 243 and 120, a 2.80 ERA, obviously more than a strikeout per inning, 89 WAR as a pitcher. And then, what do you know? Robbie Cano ends up getting in as well. And then, as we talked about, Yadi Molina made it in this world in 2034. And with that review done, we are going to call it an episode. Our player payroll obviously zoomed up to 11th highest in baseball with the big money that we are going to be spending on both Rutschman and Jenneret this upcoming season. We are definitely in win now mode. We'll find out how that goes starting in a few episodes, but we've still got some work to do this off season. In our next episode, we're going to tackle international amateur free agency in depth, continue seeing if maybe there's something we can do in the trade market or the lower end of the free agent market that will help get this team ready for spring training. And then hopefully the team can stay healthy in spring training and finally get a World Series victory here in 2034. We're pushing all our chips into the middle of the table. We are all in on the 2034 season, and we're hoping for a monster year from Jenneret to boost our offense. And we'll find out what else we do in terms of making moves to try to get ready for that 2034 season in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.